I'll start this painting with my pre-painting sketch like I usually do. And that's just drawing on the general areas of the picture that I want to paint. There'll be no details, no textures, and no shading at this point. The paint's going to take care of all of that. And I'm not really drawing this fast. I've speeded it up to make it not take as long. At this point, the only paint that I have is the blue and the white and a little bit of brown. And I lay in the white paint to start with, and just little dabs. I don't try to blend it or paint long strokes. They're just little up and down strokes. And then I put the blue right into the white while it's still wet, and then it mixes right on the paper, and then I get lighter blue, and I get different shades of blue too. And here, where I want that kind of a gray color, the shadow on the cloud, that's where I add a little bit of brown. A little bit of brown into the blue and white. Just a little bit, and let it mix together because it's all still wet when I'm putting it together. Some places here I've just got the sky, and I can always go back and make it darker if I want to. A little bit of blue over here. You notice that the blue is going on lighter than it came out of the tube, and that's because I'm putting it right down in the white. But that's how I want it. In Impressionism, they let the colors mix right on their canvas or paper. They don't really try to mix them perfectly right on the palette. And they also, it's light and color they're looking for, not the details. Quick impression of something more. So I'll speed this up and add a little bit more white. Lay in the white where the cloud is and even where the rest of the sky is going to be. Then put blue on my brush, put it right into the wet white, let it mix. More blue means the darker parts of the sky. Less blue makes more of the clouds and the shadows in the clouds. Add some brown into the blue and white mixture, and I have that nice gray that makes the shadows in the cloud. Okay, you'll notice that these mesas are an orange color, and I don't have orange on my palette. I have red and yellow, which make orange. So I start out always with a lighter color, in this case yellow, and just brush it right down on the area that I want to paint. The area that's going to be kind of that orangish color. Now I've taken just a little bit of red on my brush and I've dotted it in there. And then I wipe my brush off a little bit and I come back in and I work the red right into the yellow. Let it start to form the orange color. I have to be careful how much red I use because red pretty much takes over if you let it. Notice that parts of it I'm leaving a little bit darker, and then I'll add some white in there and let that mix with the other wet colors underneath it, and that'll bring it more to the color that I'm actually looking at in the photograph. And then some of the parts I'll leave and not put the white over it so that they're darker. The yellow that I put down here is still wet, and just like I told you before, I put just a little bit of red on my brush and I'm kind of dotting it all over instead of just starting out in one place because I know it's going to be a really strong color. And then I go back over and I brush it in again to start forming the orange that's actually the color of this particular rock formation. There's a really strong shadow in this area, so I have a little bit of blue and a little bit of brown on my brush. Impressionists didn't use black from a tube. They got their rich darks from mixing other colors, and blue and brown is a good combination for like a black substitute. So I put that right in there. You can see where there's the dark area here. Just kind of dabbing it in. I don't really, make big, like long strokes. I just kind of dab it in there. And now I'll start working on the bigger rock formation. I already did a little bit with that smaller one, but I figured you could see it better if I did it on the big one for you. So instead of having you sit through it twice, I'll just do it on this one for you. And so I've got a little bit of brown on my brush still, and the other colors are still wet. And so I'm just gently brushing it into those areas that are darker to try to get more of the definition of the rock formation. So I'm kind of careful about how much brown I'm putting on at a time. And again, it's mixing with the other color that's still wet underneath it. See all these different areas where it gets darker in the photo there. Now I'll take a little bit of white, and there's parts of the rock formation that come out more toward the viewer, and so I'll just paint that on there to lighten some of those areas up, make them appear to come out more. And it's still mixing with the wet paint, which has never been allowed to dry. So now the next area, I've already got yellow painted down in there, putting little dabs of red, letting it mix with the yellow, and I'm adding some white to get that overall color. And now I've got little bits of brown that I'm putting in to kind of define the shape a little bit more and to put in some shadows and things. Okay, now I have all these little plants and stuff, and over in this area they're really a pale green, and so I'm just going to start out with a little bit of white, and I'm just going to make little tiny strokes in there to kind of give the texture of what those plants would be. Now I take a little bit of yellow and dab that in there, and just a little bit of yellow and blue on my brush without mixing it, and then I dab that in there into the white, and I let it mix right on the paper. And it's going to start to give me the appearance of those little plants and things that are growing there. So just a little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue, and a little bit of brown all on my brush at the same time, and then just kind of dab on the texture of those little bushes and let the colors blend and mix on the canvas without me really trying to control it too much. So we got yellow, blue, and brown, and then we just dab, dab, dab. The little bushes and things down at the foot of the mesa, they're more closer to the viewer, so they're going to be darker in color, and so I won't have as much like white or anything. It's basically blue, yellow, and brown, and then let it mix on the canvas. Parts of it's going to be lighter than other parts, and so I adjust my paint to match that. So let's start out with yellow because there's a lot of green there, and yellow, that's the first color you use when you make green. I'll put in some blue, let that mix to make green right on the canvas there. There's some places that are like more shadows and stuff, so I'll put more blue in those places. I'm looking at those bushes that are right there and trying to get the general idea of what they're like. Get a little bit of brown, and I'll work that in with that blue there to get that shadow area. So I'm looking at light and shadow basically, trying to get the lights and the shadows in these little clumps of bushes that are sitting right here growing. Okay, now I have to back off and get a little bit more delicate because I've got those more faded out ones that are more up that rock formation. So I've got a smaller brush now, and I'm dabbing in some white, and the color hasn't really dried yet. And then a little bit of blue and yellow, a little bit of brown, and put that right into the white. And because it's mixing with the white, it's going to be lighter than the ones out in front. I know the rock formation's under all of these bushes, so I'm going to lay in my yellow, and most of that's going to be covered up, but then you won't see any white through the bushes. Okay, a little bit of blue, a little bit of brown, and put it right into the yellow, and that's going to make that kind of green. And so again, it's all about light and shadow. So I put in more blue in the areas that I want darker, and you can see there's a lot of darks and lights in these bushes, and even put a little bit of white in the areas that I want lighter to give that contrast. It gives it more of a three-dimensional feel too. quite a few shadows under here. If you look up at the photograph I'm painting from, you can see all those. You can see what I'm doing. I actually ran out of space on the media card before I did all the recording I wanted to do. And I was going to go back and finish, but I think once I get to the point that I get to, that maybe it'll be okay to just leave it that way. I'm paying a lot of attention to light and shadow right now because that's basically what the Impressionists did, light and shadow and the play of light and color. And I've got these little weeds that are growing up above the rest of it, and I'm just using little brush strokes from the tip of my brush to make the little leaves that are coming up, they're coming out from the stalk. You don't have to make them detailed at all, not with Impressionism you don't. And sometimes when you're painting stuff that's supposed to be in the distance, you don't anyway. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit more here. I could go up and I could add some more of those little pale plants that are up there more toward the rock formation. But you saw how I did that, so I don't know if I'll do that right now. I could probably even just leave it the way it was and it would be an okay painting. Finish up here. Actually, this paper is a little bit longer than what the format of the painting is, so I've got some extra at the side that I would just cut off. But lay in some more different greens and things like that, and there's some strong shadows over here that I'll put in as well. And before long, I'm going to run out of space, and this is what I have.